Good morning, Krista Ruffini. I'm so pleased to have an opportunity to welcome you to McCourt officially this year. We were excited to recruit you earlier and excited that you had an opportunity to do a postdoc at the Minneapolis Fed before you joined us. So I'm looking forward to talking with you about your work and about what you've done over the past year.
Thanks, Maria. I'm really excited to join the McCourt community.
So can you share a little bit about your work and what inspired you to pursue this policy area? And I've got to say, the policy area, social policy, I think works, but you are working on a number of exciting projects on a whole bunch of different programs.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my research agenda is quite broad, but at the end of the day, it really tries to examine how different policies that are targeted towards disadvantaged populations affect education, labor market, and health outcomes. So kind of under that broad umbrella, I have two main strains. So one's looking at the effect of different nutritional assistance programs on kids and families' well-being. And so I've done a lot of work looking at recent expansions in the school meals program to make this more of a universal program and examining how this affects kids' academic achievement, and with Nora Gordon, who's also at McCourt, on schools discipline. And so going forward, this is really exciting to explore as more and more schools have opportunities to offer these universal type meals for the coming school year. And then kind of pivoting more towards labor market questions, I've done some work looking at the effects of minimum wages, particularly in the nursing home sector. So there's a long literature that's looking at really the labor market effects of minimum wages. And here I'm taking a little bit more of a broader view and saying, well, how does this affect the types of services that consumers are receiving? Does this affect employee performance? Does it affect firm profitability? And I find that increases in the minimum wage do improve worker performance in the sense that there's fewer health inspection violations, there's fewer adverse health outcomes among nursing home recipients. But kind of under these headline results, there's also some important distributional considerations. So in the sense that firms are experiencing an increase in their labor costs, they need to offset these in some way. But rather than reducing their profits, they're recruiting people who have a greater ability to pay, and then they're charging these private payers more. So we're seeing two things. First, some Medicaid recipients are losing access to this type of care. They're being replaced with people who tend to be more towards the higher end of the wealth distribution. And then these higher income people are also paying more for the services they receive. So kind of where we come down on whether or not we want to increase the minimum wage, we need to account for all of these other things that are going on that are kind of outside the direct effects of labor markets.
Well, both of those bodies of work are incredibly timely at this moment, as we're seeing a big expansion potentially on SNAP, or what people have historically referred to as food stamp benefits. And a lot of the discussion of that has been about exactly the effects you're talking about. To what extent will that support better outcomes, better developmental outcomes for children, better health outcomes, and those things. And we're also seeing I think a big discussion in post-COVID of kind of the employment and earnings of frontline care workers and what the implications of that are. And I really think there's very little work that has really addressed this critical issue that you have focused on, of what are the impact of these increase in wages, not just for the well-being of workers, but for the well-being of the people that they serve.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this spills over to so many other industries, from the childcare industry to other forms of frontline workers.
I mean, one of the things that I think is so interesting for McCourt and for McCourt students is that your work shows that we need to take into account, as you said, kind of these other factors, that it's not just solving the one piece of the problem. So it's not just, what do frontline workers need to earn in order for them to be able to support themselves and their families, but it's what are the implications of the quality of care, but then it's also what are the implications for cost, and how are we going to manage that and make sure that people who may not be able to bear higher costs are still able to access care. So those are, it's never simple.
No, definitely not. And I think that's where kind of the fun of the research comes, is trying to dive into these complicated issues and trying to parse out everything that's going on.
What kind of data do you use when you're addressing these issues?
Yeah, so I use a variety of different data sources. So everything from, household surveys from the CPS, ACS, to kind of more niche data sets that are still publicly available. And kind of my I don't know if you want to call it like knack or interest in finding these data sets came from some of my professional policy work, where oftentimes policymakers would ask you a question, and giving them this isn't possible is usually not a good answer. So you needed to find data sources that could get at making progress on these questions.
Right, and I think our students will really benefit from working with you and learning from you, and the balance between those things. And then on the far end, there are people who bring evidence that really has nothing to bear with the question, but in the absence of anything else, they bring in a factoid that actually doesn't inform at all and may misinform the question. And so helping all of us to understand better when we have information that really will inform policy and when we don't, I think is a critical part of what we do here at McCourt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think engaging with the students and helping train the next generation of policy leaders to be strong advocates for this evidence-based policy is something I'm very much looking forward to.
That's great. Are there topics that you are passionate about that people may not know about?
So as you mentioned, my research agenda is quite broad and really touches on a lot of different aspects of the safety net and different aspects of social policy. One kind of area that is outside of my research, but I have a soft spot for reading the journal articles whenever they pop up, is questions about political economy and how our engagement with the political system shapes not only what we might perceive as the resources that are available to us, but also the incentives that we have to participate in labor markets and education.
Yeah, those are great issues, and I'm sure that makes you a particularly good fit for a place like McCourt that has folks who are economists like you and I, but also political scientists and sociologists and other social scientists who have different perspectives on what might be important in understanding policy outcomes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best parts about policy school, especially a place like McCourt, is it brings together all of these really great social scientists who speak the same language but are coming at these questions from slightly different angles.
Agreed. And we usually are speaking the same language, not always, as our students sometimes tell us, but that's part of the fun too, is trying to understand what we mean when we say the things that we say. So can you tell me what you're most excited about as you prepare to teach the future policy leaders here at McCourt?
Yeah, so in the fall, I'm teaching in the core micro sequence, and I'm really looking forward to this class because this was kind of the pivotal class for me in both my undergrad and my MPP, where it made me realize and really appreciate the strong tool set that economics can provide us with. So McCourt students are going to get a variety of tools. Economics is just one of those. But I think it provides us with a really rigorous analytical framework that is also really flexible in the types of questions we can apply it to, everything from education policy to questions related to inequality, climate change, all of these types of things. So I'm really looking forward to this class and engaging with students, bringing in their policy interests and previous experiences to help them build this skill set that hopefully they'll use in their careers going forward.
That's great. I have lots of memories of micro at different levels, and some of them are very, very good memories, and some of them are very, very bad memories. So I think it's terrific that you'll be in that sequence. Can you share the best piece of career advice that you have received?
Yeah, so I think one piece of career advice that I've received kind of throughout from various people is find something that you really care about and you're passionate about and just zero in on that. and see where it takes you. And I think that that's important just in the sense that we spend a lot of time in our careers, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And if we're doing something that we're passionate about, it kind of makes those challenges or stumbling blocks a little bit more easy to tackle. And related to that, I would tell students, don't stress out too much about doing everything in a perfect linear order. Oftentimes it's these different routes or these things that we don't expect that can really shape our interests and make us successful in our eventual career. So know that there's more than one way to get to the right place, and what the right place is might change from time to time.
Well, welcome to the Moport community, Krista. We're so pleased to have you here and so glad to be actually able to welcome you to the Hilltop and to a physical office. And you have a tremendous number of new colleagues this year, and then an even larger number of colleagues who are new to our physical community. Because last year we had so many people join us who didn't really join us in person. So we're really excited to have you, and looking forward to having you be part of our community.
Great, thanks, Maria. I'm really looking forward to a really exciting year.